Welcome everyone to our class on Sefer Higayon. We, Baruch Hashem, successfully completed that Funos, and now we're ready to embark upon the second of the Ramchal's trilogy on learning Gemara, which is Sefer Higayon. The third one being Sefer Melitza. In their Funos, the Ramchal makes the statement that he wanted his system to be based on Gemara itself. In Sefer Higayon, he's going to tell us that he used other sources also. Now, it's no secret that the Ramchal, as well as other Chachamim, based a lot of their insight into Higayon on Aristotle. The Rambam himself wrote a book called Milas Higayon, and the Gra wrote his book on Higayon. And the interesting thing is that the great Chachamim that we have took Aristotle's basic works and organized it and refined it according to their total understanding. In Der Tfunos, we brought a very interesting chazal about Rabbi Akiva. Rabbi Akiva was called Gittin and Otza Bloom. What he did is he went around and he gathered all the learning from all Torah Shabbat, all the great rabbis of his generation, and organized it into a systematic form, which he gave to his students, which we have as the Mishnah. This type of organization and classification requires a tremendous knowledge of the material that you're trying to organize, in this case, Torah Shabbat, and also a tremendous mind in order to organize it properly. The concept of learning Higayon, methods of logic, require the same type of understanding of material and also organization. And it's something that the Sephardic rabbis are very comfortable with, and you see it less the formal Aristotelian logic. You see it less in the Ashkenazic rabbi. That being said, the Ramchal himself, in his introduction, has to give, or does give, a reason why one should study the topic of Higayon, the logic. And maybe we'll jump right into the Sefer itself and see that explanation. He says the following in his Agdama: "Kishenashkif al briyas haaretz u'ma shemegia aleihem Nirish Nasan Elohim Bnei Adam Chalegodo B'Yeshuvo Shel Olam Hazer Ubahashlamat Kol Maloha." It says when you observe the creation and what Kodesh Baruch Hu apportioned to every part of that creation, you recognize that the Kodesh Baruch Hu gave man a tremendous portion in Yeshuvo Olam, in settling the world, and in making it complete. Ad shenocha loma shebrias bereishis b'ma shenogeh lechelek hazeh lo hayasa ela kamo v'schala l'metzius elu v'kochaniyot l'hashlamatam. So when you look at it carefully, you'll see that the Ma'aser Bereishis itself is a potential. That's only really a beginning, and it really needs to be completed. Amnam hashlamatam b'foel nimsera la'adam gamre. This completion of creation is given to man completely. There's no other animal that has this ability to be a partner, so to speak, in the creation. Kodesh Baruch Hu created Kocho, potential in his universe, and he put man here to take that potential and make it into reality. Everything that we see, from basic farming systems to computers, is all really there in the creation in and of itself. And it's man's position to take the potential of what the Kodesh Baruch Hu put in the creation and to bring it out. Scientists don't create things, they discover things. If the Kodesh Baruch Hu didn't put the electricity into the universe, so a man could not make something from nothing. All he does is discover what Kodesh Baruch Hu placed there. But that's the beginning point of the Ramchal, that man is a partner in creation, and Kodesh Baruch Hu set up the system that way, that man should be a partner in creation, and to bring all of the potential out of the reality into its real form, into its actual form. Our rabbis have already brought proof to the truth of this when they said, a very important state, that everything that was created needs a tikkun. Now, normally, the way the word tikkun is used is that there's something broken and you have to fix it. But the Ramchal has a tremendous chiddush here that it's not a question of anything being broken, it's a question of the world being set up as a potential, and we have to, man, bring it into its completion, into its reform. So, I just quoted, to have the text here, I'll be giving out this text to those people who like it, the actual Chazal, which is Rufus. I won't go through the whole Chazal, it's very, very interesting. But basically, Turnus Rufus is arguing with Rabbi Akiva about Mila and the necessity for destroying Hashem's world. And Rabbi Akiva tells Turnus Rufus that he shows him some undefined wheat and beautiful cakes, and he says which one is better. And with this understanding, he tries to explain that everything in the world needs to, everything has to be fixed. Man is not here just to enjoy reality. Man is here to bring all the potential, both physical and spiritual, into the real world. And that's what Kodesh Baruch Hu gave us, and that's why the wheat is changed into beautiful cake. So the Ramchal explains, everything needs to be fixed, not a question we said broken, but brings its potential has to be brought out. Wheat needs to be ground. Tormusin, some bitter plant, you have to be sweetened. And then whatever you see, you'll see that man constantly is trying to improve on, or actually bring out the potential of the universe. The Nimsa Ode, Sheshal Turnus Rufus, says Rabbi Akiva, Eza Maisanayim, so here's where the Ramchal brings it. Eza Maasim Nayim, Shel Shemayim O Shel Basar V'Dam. Which actions are more beautiful? The actions of heaven or the actions of man? Turnus Rufus is always trying to knock Rabbi Akiva down, which is pretty foolish, but that's what the Rosh always tries to do. So he asks them, which is greater, the works of heaven or the works of man? Then Shiva Rabbi Akiva answers, Shel Basar V'Dam. Very surprising. And that's what says man's work is actually much more beautiful. And to prove it, he brings raw wheat and beautiful cakes, and he says, which one's more beautiful? The Ramchal describes that when you bring proof, so you should bring, you have proofs that are from Kabbalah, and you have proofs from Teva. So those are the two proofs that he brought from Kabbalah. Now he's going to bring a proof the nature of the universe. ובאמס איננו הראו שכל דבריו הטבעיים כשיונחו בטבעם בלי עבודת האדם ומלאכתו, הנה יעשה ממה שבחוקם הטבעי, אך לא בהשלמה. So now he turns to looking at the physical world, and he says, when we observe the world, we see that when things are left to their natural way, without man intervening and acting on it, so they do produce. They do produce, but they don't produce in a complete way. וכשיעסוק בהם האדם ויעזור אסטיבם, יסדר תוצאותיהם על סדר הגון, הנה לא יביא יותר שלמים ונעים וזה פשוט. But when man intervenes and he deals with the realities of nature, and he helps their growth, and he organizes the results in a proper and fitting order, so then we see that very clearly that the results are much more beautiful. This is something very simple. And he brings an example. So if you take a tree, if you leave that tree alone, you don't do any work. Natural. Even if it does give fruits, you cannot compare that tree that was left in its natural state to the tree that was worked on when man goes to work and fertilized and trimming and all the wisdom that he has. And you'll see that there's no comparison between the apples or whatever fruit the tree produces in its natural state and when man works on it. V'adama atzma, also land itself, the physical earth. Asher lo tubad, if it's not worked on, or lo tizavel, or lo tader, if it's not fertilized and it's not plowed up, or lo titen yevula kolika, the land, the earth will not produce anything. Oh, mehu razeh v'chaser, or it will be very weak and lacking. So lati ketas v'makomot asher tirpeh bam hachanas hatavis. And he says this is true for most every place in our planet, except for the few places which have extremely rich and fertile soils and heavy rainfall, probably like in the Amazon. And there you don't have to work very hard. But the vast majority of the earth is a place that man has to live, and the physical environment is not such that everything is there for proper development of the plants or the trees. So that was his raya.
Rabbi Chaim, can I interrupt you for a second?
Yes, please.
Are you using a different mic? Because it's just not as clear as it usually is.
Oh boy, I'm really sorry about that. I was using a different mic. Oh boy.
Okay.
Is that better if I get closer, or is it still probably poor, right? I have a little bit of
Are you using... no, but it's the mic itself is just not picking up as well as it normally does.
Yeah, that's too bad. Should I take a little break and fix that?
Okay. How long is it going to take?
I'm gonna. Good. So the Ramchal has brought two proofs, two types of proofs. One, a raya mitzad Kabbalah, as we learned in Der Tfunos, and the other one, a raya mitzad Teva, that things have to be worked on, and nothing left by itself comes to fruition, and that's really a basic foundation of the Kodesh Baruch Hu's world. And because of that, he says, Klalo shel davar, Makam haniyach habor yisbarach levnei adam b'mashi yodam magas she's gadru bo begadel hema ba'olamo et asher teled hateva. He says, in summation, the Kodesh Baruch Hu has given man a great role in life, in all the things that come to his hand, that he has to define them and to develop them from their natural state. And here's his point. He says this also is not just an external reality, but even the mind of man also has to have this type of development. Mudbasbo betivo mitchila imlo yubed yek ki'ilan asher lo ya'aved uka'adama asher lo samu lev aleha. If a person doesn't work on his thinking, his ability to reason and to think, and he just leaves it to its nature, so it won't be as good as if he works on it. Just like the tree that's left to its nature is not as refined as when man puts his mind to it. Even though he won't stop to think, if he doesn't work at all, sure, he'll get a lot of understanding and ideas. Just like the tree, if you leave it alone, it also will produce fruits. Amnam lo tishaveh haskalaso achrei havoda haskalaso zulatzen. But then you can't compare a person who has worked on his thinking to a person who has not worked on his thinking. Kasher lo yishaveh priya ilan hanebad impiria zulose. Just like with a tree, you can't compare the two fruits. When man puts his chachma into farming, he produces wonderful, wonderful fruits. And also, the mind, says the Ramchal, is the same way. If he just leaves it as it goes, sure, it'll produce fruits, but no comparison to the person who works on his thinking processes. U'kamoshu tzarech limud b'nosei hametzius dahainu hamuskalos kulam shehem osek shelo uvelo ze lo teitze haskalaso mikol hilapolo. So he says a person has to work on learning, just like he has to work on learning the items of reality. Again, just like he needs a hadracha, a limud, he has to have a method when it comes to learning things in the reality, which is all the concepts, which is what really is what observing reality is about. If he doesn't put his mind to develop the understanding of reality, so just like if you can't be a doctor without learning the field of medicine, and you can't be a Talmud Chacham without learning the Gemara, but he says also you cannot be a person who thinks clearly without learning how the mind operates in the process of thinking. You have to put that same type of organization and energy into learning how the mind works. In order that his thinking process will be complete, and without error. V'lo chaser, and will not be lacking anything, and will not be all mixed up, will be very clear. So that's the Ramchal's opening move. He has to demonstrate that learning higayon is something that a person must do. In the world, many people learn, just like they learn language in a natural way, just by hearing it. People learn, right, just by reading and reading and reading, and hopefully mastering the concepts. But the Ramchal is saying it's not enough. You cannot, not only do you have to learn the material, but you have to learn the way and the process the mind works. And that's his reason for writing the book. A lot of people ask, where's your Masorah for it? Where's your Masorah for this? The Ramchal brings a raya al piteva here that you have to develop your mind. And his
Good luck, everybody. It's Yankee.
Hi, Yankee. Hi. We're doing Sefer Gayon now. Okay.
Okay, great.
Okay. So the Ramchal has now brought two reasons why a person should develop his mind. First of all, because everything in nature is set up that way by Kodesh Baruch Hu, and as Chazal said, Kol Tzrichin Tikkun, and also when we observe reality, Raya al Piteva, we see that anything that man works on produces much better than when man leaves it to its nature. So that's his opening move for writing the book. Va'amnam Metachli zeh torchei chachamim shekadmu lanu l'sadeh sidrei haskala u'lavarech u'kaseh al nachon. He said that to get to this tachlis, which is understanding the process of thinking and being able to develop it properly, so the wise men of previous generations have worked very, very hard in order to organize the method of logic and to explain all its rules properly. What do? They looked at and observed how the mind works, how it develops proper concepts and how it produces improper concepts. And what goes into creating a proper image, a true image, and a false image. Lema'an, why do they do this investigation of thinking? Lema'an das mamashi yishomer behisbon so kadei shelo yeteh, because they were interested in watching the process of thinking in order so that they wouldn't make any errors and stray from the truth. So that was the negative. They didn't want to stray from the truth, and also they wanted to be able to hit the truth more accurately. This study is called the study of logic, Meleches Higayon. So this is the third thing he said. He said, not this is something that the Chachamim throughout the ages have done. As I said, our Chachamim and previous and Goyish Chachamim also, because they realize that the mind is capable of straying from the truth, as we learned in the beginning of his introduction in Derek Tfunos. Because there's a multiplicity of truth in anything, and also he brought over there that man himself is capable of believing things without proof. So a lot of errors can come in, both technical errors and emotional errors, and a person has to be able to reason very, very carefully in order to make sure that he's on the track. And when I saw this great need for this, makes a very powerful statement. Now, without this study, it's impossible to enter into the places of wisdom and to enjoy properly the wisdom that's there. I decided that what I'm going to do is I'm going to organize this study in a very brief way. According to what I see is absolutely necessary to get the complete picture. Rubo hatikav misvarim shekadmuni b'lashon acheros. Here's where he says, many of this I copied from books of previous generations in a different language. Now I believe that that's Greek. And I brought what I read to Lashon HaKodesh in order to help Am Yisrael. The Inyanam Hosafti, very important. And what I did was I added things. Garati, I also eliminated things. Vishanisi, and I changed things. Ma'asher matzati lefanai, from what I saw. Don't think I just imported wholesale Aristotelian philosophy. And I actually did tremendous work. I added to what he said. I removed certain things. I changed things. And in order that it would be more fitting. So anata korenaim. So therefore, my pleasant reader, amod v'hizbonon, stand up and investigate. Shma v'hosif lekach. Listen carefully, and you will gain. V'ledas nafshecha yinaneim, and your mind will find it pleasant. So here the Ramchal tells us an important point. Two points that we have to consider very carefully. One, that the learning of Higayon is something that one must do in order to develop properly, except for the few, just like in the few areas like in the Amazon that are so rich and plentiful by nature, they grow anything. So too you have Gaonim, who are given a special gift that by nature they have tremendous accuracy in their thinking processes. But just like in the world, those places are few and far between, and not the rule. The rule is man has to work and develop it. So too, when it comes to human beings, most people are not given that super ability, and therefore they have to work very hard to develop these these understandings of the thinking process. So that's the Ramchal's introduction to the Sefer. Any questions of that up to this point? Okay.
I guess.
No, it's interesting.
I guess not.
Okay.
It's fascinating. No, the idea of working on developing your mind is a fascinating concept. It's not something that's normally discussed, but everybody just takes it for granted. They just got to throw yourself into learning. And here he's telling you got to work on it, just like you have to work on anything else in this world.
Right. And in Dirk Funos, he said that both Chachamim and not Chachamim could gain from what he said. The proof is that as I said, the Rambam wrote Sefer Milas Higayon, and the Guru wrote a book on Higayon. And as I showed you when we were doing Dirk Funos in Mishle, the Guru clearly uses the basic categories of Higayon. So it's something that was very well known, and I'm not sure why it's fallen out of grace, but It's something that we have to do in order to understand Torah. Remember that Kodesh Baruch Hu relates to us through the Torah. I mean, the way we know what His will is by understanding the Torah Sheba'al Peh and the Torah Sheba'al Peh, and that's verbal communication. So it's very, very important to be clear about how the thinking processes work. But it's a Hiddush because most people are not educated that way. Most people are educated on-the-job training, which is hit and miss, unfortunately. A lot of people who can be very successful in all sorts of demanding fields of science, mathematics, and when it comes to Torah, because they're not sensitive to the processes of analysis, so it's very easy to drop by the wayside. So by having these books which clearly define the processes of thinking, so then you're able to handle in a conscious way any text that you come into. And that's really the power of these books. It gives you a very grounded understanding of what's considered logically correct and what's considered fantasy. Or, also as a way to check yourself out. These are all things that the Ramchal said, and Bezat Hashem will understand it more and more. Now, in Tfunos, at the end of the book, he spoke about bechinot, various aspects of subjects. That's going to be one of his topics that he's going to develop very, very, very deeply. He's going to cover the statements, he's going to cover the syllogisms, but when it comes to the different bechinot of things, he's going to get very, very much involved in it, which only a few lines in Tfunos on Siba turns into a few chapters in this Sefer. So everything, again, is going to be extremely logical, and lo b'shamayim, it's, when you think about it, it'll be very, very obvious. And what the Ramchal said is that what he's done is organized it and changed it and developed it and refined it into a system that's compact and accurate. So Bezat Hashem will start on it. So let's go into the first chapter. He's going to now talk about the levels of conception, intellectual conception, or should I say perception and conception, going from the physical perception of reality up to higher and higher levels of conception. So let's see how he does that. Perek Aleph. Klal meleches higayon mahi b'tzarech bo v'tzarech bo, excuse me, chiluf mitzius lemurgash lemuskal lemufrad meduma ulemusag ulebadui. Now, the text has a little summary of what he's going to cover. Okay, so he's going to talk about the general principles of Higayon, and he's going to tell you the levels of intellectual perception from the physical to the intellectual, and he'll explain all these terms. So he says like this: Hine kol omal haseichel v'hishtadlu so hu lahasig adavorim lamitasam. He says that all the work of the mind and its strivings is to conceive of things in their truth. Again, just like he started in Der Tfunos. What we're out is not for a fuzzy understanding of things, or worse, a false understanding of things. We're trying to understand what is true and what is not true. However, when the mind analyzes and tries to discover truth, it happens that the mind can make errors. And it can happen that the mind can conceive of something and think that it's true when it's actually false. Al ken yitzarech lo limud ledas lahakir mekomos ha-mikshol she'efshar lo lehikoshel behem. So there, since we understand that the mind has the ability to make mistakes, so we need a manual, a limud. We have to learn and have a manual to help us recognize the places where we can trip up. What the stumbling blocks are and how we can stumble on them, how to protect ourselves from stumbling on them, until we can produce or discover a true conceptual reality. This study of the process of thinking is called higayon. Ikam maleches haseichel b'vakashaso yidiyas hadavoim hu havchana ad shiakir kol davar v'davar b'fnei atzmo nivchan v'nivdal mikol zulaso. Now, he says the essential striving of the mind and what it requests to do and when it wants to know things is analysis, havchana, analysis. And this analysis must produce a perception where everything is unique from everything else. Then you can have the clarity that you have a true perception and not making combinations which don't exist. So, Amnam bi'os sheklal hametzius yesh behem ma shedoma ha'echad uzo v'yesh behem ma shenavdil ha'echad mizo al kain lo yagia haseichel lesof malachto ad shishtalem b'shtei hapulos shehem hadimin v'ha'hebdel. Since when we look at the world of reality, there are certain things which are comparable to other things, and there's certain things which are different than other things. So we cannot say that we've arrived at a complete understanding unless we have everything set with the two basic principles of Dimion and Hebdel. This is a categorical way of handling reality. Okay, we'd like to say if you have your table is filled with all sorts of objects after many hours of hard work and they're all messy. So what do? You organize your reality and you put them in boxes and set them up until you have a clear perception of all the different aspects of what's going on. Rabbi Akiva, when he went to all his students, to all his Rebbes of his generation, he was called an Otsar Bloom. An Otsar Bloom. An Otsar Bloom is a case that peddlers put their wares in. It has many, many compartments. So he compartmentalizes all his wares so he can demonstrate them and find them very easily. So the mind also, when it comes to reality, has to be very, very organized so that everything will fit in its proper place. If you think about the difference between the Mishnah and the Chumash, the organization of the Chumash is a timeline, basically a timeline organization, starting from the creation of the world, ending with our entering, just before entering Eretz Israel. The Mishnah takes a content view of the information. So it divides things into 6 categories. Zman Nakat is the Roshi Tevis, Zroim, Moed. Nashim, Nezikin, Kachim, Taros, and organizes each one of those into subcategories in a very organized system. So that really is a question of, for instance, not a question, but the Nezikin, for instance, which exists in a few different Sifrei Chumash, will be brought together in the discussion of the Arba Avos. Okay, and similarly, the Mishnah. So the Mishnah is organizes material in a form of content, which means it'll take Pesukim from various parts of the Chumash and organizing not according to its timeline, but according to its content. So that really is the Otsar Bloom concept, I think, of Rabbi Akiva, which was categorically, to organize things categorically. And the Ramchal is really following that. He's saying that if you want to understand things, you have to have them organized in a categorical system in which everything fits according to its proper midrega and is distinct one from the other. And the process of doing it is Dimyan and Hevdel. He's going to explain that a little deeper now. Yeah, go ahead, please.
It sounds like he's saying that it's not even, he's not like giving you a suggestion. He's saying that that's the way the mind works. The mind is designed to always try to reach that ultimate goal of being able to identify and categorize things. Right? Is that correct?
That's exactly correct. That's exactly correct. Now, in both these things, making the proper comparison and making the proper distinction, the mind can make errors. If he compares what's not comparable, or he makes a distinction where no distinction should apply. This is one of the difficult things in learning because people make hasty generalizations and they are not aware of the fine distinctions that exist. So one has to be very careful. The mind likes to make generalities, but the generalities have to be very carefully formed and must exist in the proper structure. Al-Kain, l'shteihem tzarech limud v'imun v'chukim u'sidarim. So both these basic processes of the mind, which is to compare things and to show the differences, comparison and difference, they need limud, imun, and chukim sudarim. You have to have some sort of system of limud, of study. You have to do imun, you have to practice. And, of course, you have to know their laws in a very organized way. Shiamiduhu b'nasiv hayasha, and then once that's done, you'll be able to stand on the straight path. V'lo yishbeh mimenu, and not to stray from it. Ad she'asi tachliso al nachon, until you get to the tachlis, which is the proper understanding of everything in its unique place. So now he's going to explain the levels of reality. And he says, Klal HaMetzius is like b'shnei chalakim, harishon murgash, v'hasheni muskal. Okay, he says that Metzius is divided into two parts. When you look at reality, you have reality which is murgash or muchash, physical reality or sensual reality. V'hasheni muskal. The second level of reality is called an intellectual reality or a conceptual reality. Hamurgash hu shemusab min echad hachushim. Murgash is something that you sense from it's a musag, it's a concept that comes from your senses. Now really, we're going to be talking about only things that go on in the mind. The question is, what is the source of your information? So the base level of information is from your senses. And all the concepts that come from your senses are called murgash. Musagim, which are murgash, physical concepts. He's going to explain this in a second. Hamuskal, but there's a higher level of thought, which is called muskal, intellect. Hu asher yedmeyu haseichel b'dimyono. The mind now takes from sensory perception and starts creating comparisons. And ach ein metzius kein chutz menu, that don't exist in the physical world. The yechale gam hu l'shnayim, and this type of intellectual process is also divided in two parts. One is called a mufrad, and one is called a medumai. One is called to extract, an extraction, and one is called a comparison. Now he's going to explain those things because they need to be explained. Perisho. Hamuchash hu derech mashal ha'even v'ha'eit shiron asol b'chush. The level of muchash, or sensory conception, is looking at the stone or the tree that you see with your eyes. Okay? So anything that we perceive physically, I'm looking around here and I see a computer and I see an electric light bulb and I see a bottle of water over here and a printer and a book. Anything that my eye beholds, or any of my physical perception, but let's just talk about the eye at this point, those are called muchashim, things that exist in physical reality. What then is the muskal? Kagon, chachma, muskalim concepts are like wisdom, or zikaron, memory, or gevura, strength. Shehem devorim shemaskilim hamitzayirim osam b'seichel achachushu. Those are things that the mind pictures, but they don't have any reality in Kush. You don't go to a zoo and you see in a cage strength. You don't go to the zoo and you see memory. These are high-level concepts which don't exist in the physical world, but they come from the physical, but they don't exist in the physical world. Now he's going to explain. The mufrad, what's the difference between the mufrad and the medumeh? The mufrad, hu shema she'enu musag ben achushim, ela bechibor im zulaso. The mufrad is something that's not conceived from the senses, ela bechibor im zulaso. The sense, the senses only see it in conjunction with something else. The mind then abstracts it, and keeps it and isolates it. He's going to say like color in a second. He's going to explain all these things. Color is again, doesn't exist, and you can't look and go to the zoo and see color. You see animals that have color, so it's the mind takes the concept of color from various realities and creates a concept called black, a concept called green, a concept called red. But that is something that the mind did. And the way the mind did it was by extracting a certain quality that is part of the sense perception, like color. What does the meduma do? The musag goes to a higher level of conception, and it doesn't have any relationship to the physical world. Lo levado v'lo b'chibor, not by itself or connected to the physical world. Ela haseichu hu asher yadame also. It's the mind that creates the concept. V'yischalek gam hu l'shnayim, harishan musag v'asheni badui. The first one is called a musag, a concept, and the second one is called a fantasy. Now he's going to explain. Perisho. Hamare, when a person sees things, hainu, the hainu. haloven v'shachros. Let's say we're talking about white and black color. V'shar gavanim, all the different colors, red, green, black, yellow, orange, whatever they are. Ein hachush ro'on osolevado. You don't see color by itself in reality. You can see a cat in reality. You can see a bottle in reality. You can see a computer in reality. But there's no object in reality called black. Ela nasunim be'echad min hagufim. It's always found in some object in reality. Ach haseichel mitzayar haloven hi os inyan echad v'nosaf al haguf shehu b'tocho. What does the mind do? The way the mind sees it is that really white exists and it's added to the object. So you say this bottle is white. This book cover is white. This table is brown. So you, in your mind, take the concept of brown and you add it to the reality. The mind handles it as if color is something that is added to the object itself. So you see that what happens is that the mind separates in its imagination from the item that this color is found in, for instance, and that's why it's called mufrad, because it's a concept that has a base in the physical world, but the mind abstracts it and it makes it into a separate concept, almost as if the color is something that the mind will say, this thing is red, this thing is white, as if the mind is now placing the concept of color on the object. So we've discussed here so far two levels of conception. Okay.
I was waiting for the chart.
Okay.
I was getting lost.
I know you're going to get lost. It's quite easy. That's why we have Vizio, Baruch Hashem. Look, you have Murgash, the base level. I would even make this chart even though it's true the way it's set up, it's according to the book, but the base level of conception is seeing things in reality as they are. The bottle, the computer. Okay. When I say the word animal, let's go to the zoo, okay? If I see a cat outside my house or a dog, so I am perceiving something that is in reality. That's called a muchash. If I go to the zoo and I look in each cage, I say there's a lion, there's a tiger, there's a leopard, right? So the concept of this lion or this lion or this cat or this dog or whatever animal it is called a muchash, because it's very close to the physical reality. It's a concept that is based on a physical reality. The lion in the cage, the lion. But once I create the concept of animal, for instance, to make it clear, I was going to say the concept of lion, okay? But to make it clear, if I create the concept of animal, when I go to the zoo, I don't see a cage that's listed animal, right? I see a cage that lists lions, bears, and tigers. The mind makes an abstraction from those various details and says, you know something, there's a common quality among all these animals, all these different types, and I make a new concept, a higher concept called animal. Okay, and that's called a meduma. Okay, now if I just abstract the quality from the animal, but I don't make a new concept, that's called a mufrad. Okay, so for instance, like it says color. Color is something that I took from the physical self, but I didn't make a new category.
Okay, it's only a quality that I abstracted. It definitely is not the muchash itself. Okay, when I talk about brown, now the bears are brown and the tigers may be brown and the squirrels may be brown. Okay, but that was a concept that I abstracted from the physical reality. It's not a categorical concept. So that's why it's called mufrad. It's closer to the physical reality. So we have three levels so far. We have the physical realities, what you actually physically see in front of you. That's the lowest level of conception. And then we're going to make higher levels of conception. The first higher level of conception is to abstract things from the physical reality, like color, okay, like heat, like weight, okay. But the next level up in abstraction really is called the categorical level, where I take objects and I create a new category that has no physical contact, so to speak, back to the thing itself. Okay, so that's why I keep saying to you, when you go to the zoo, you can't say, let's look at the cage that has the animal in it. There's no cage that has the animal in it. Because that's a conceptual, that's a concept. That's a concept that was created from the physical, and it cannot be pushed back into the physical. I mean, it can describe the physical. You could say, yes, this bear is an animal, but it does not have a unique perception. It's a categorical perception that comes from looking at all the details. So is that clear? So you have the physical animal, the lion, and then you have the things that you can say about the lion, like he's white, okay, or whatever, mine's brown, okay. Then there's that's called a mufrad. You make conceptions by abstracting from the physical items, but then there's a higher level of abstraction which is called the category, okay, and that's called the meduma. Okay, so we went from the murgash, the lion, and we said that's labeling what you physically see in front of you. That's the lowest level of abstraction. Then the next level of abstraction, I would like to put it down here if I could, really, because it's a higher level of abstraction. Maybe it shouldn't be under, it should be above, but you know what I mean. And there is when I start not just labeling what's in front of me, but using my mind to create higher levels of understanding. So the base level there is the mufrad, which is still connected to the lion. I say brown. Okay, brown is a concept that you can't find brown anywhere, but still the lion is brown. And then there's the higher, but that really is just separating an aspect, or looking at an aspect of the lion. But to create the concept of animal is already called, to make a categorical class, is called meduma. Okay, I hope that's clear. So
why are you translating meduma as speculative? Speculative is.
I don't like those words. I think we had a big. I mean, Rabbi Sackler and myself had a big discussion when we first translated this book. Okay, he went. I mean, he did his university work in, believe it or not, in Greek logic. Okay, he and then he got involved in Torah, and very interesting. His father didn't exactly want him to be involved in Torah. As he brought him to Harvard, and he met one of the big professors there that what came from Slobodka, a very old man, and he said, "David, you want to learn Torah? Don't go to the university. Go to yeshiva." That's what he told him. So that's where he went. So when we first studied, and this guy was teaching in the Rachmanis, he was a good graduate of Slobodka. Okay, you had to make up an I don't know what, I'm not going to judge him. But anyway, the Kitzer, when David came to the yeshiva, so Rabbi Goldstein, as I mentioned, because he got these books from Rabbi Davis, so he started teaching Sefer Gayon, and David almost collapsed. He said, wait a minute, this is Aristotelian philosophy, you know. So if he would have read carefully, which he did later on, you see it's not, there's many chidushim in this book above Aristotle. where Aristotle was on the money, so the Ramchal agrees with him. Where not, he disagrees with him. Okay, and the study is continued, to abstract and symbolic and all these things. But what we need to know is, and what the Ramchal tried to do was to give us a small handbook, which is guide us in our thinking and understanding the Gemara, because we really want to understand Hashem, and that's where all our energy goes into. But of course, it'll have spill-off in the world, because thinking is something you do in every aspect of life. Okay? But anyway, this is what it is. He says, in this little chapter, he's explained the various levels of conception, okay, from physical conception, the lion, to abstract conception, which is the color of the lion, say green or yellow, brown, okay, to categorical perception, which is even higher. So the word speculative, what happened was, to answer your question, when we started translating the books, it really started with Dirk Tfunos. David said, look, David, he said, if people really want to look up the words in other contexts, in the world of logic, so they should know what word to look up, or look up in the dictionary. So I said, well, maybe we should really use more natural language that would give more of the meaning, even though it's not the strict language of the formal language, but it will give a lot more understanding. Anyway, I bent to his understanding, and believe it or not, now he's coming out with an update of Tunos where he's going to use more natural language, as far as I understand. So we're going to have to live with this word, meduma. I don't like it. Speculative, wide speculation. It's a technical word, but basically it means making categorical concepts. Okay. Now, we didn't finish. We'll just finish one more thing here. Musag and Badawi. So we said this higher level of concept is called the Musag. Okay. Now we're going to have to see what this Badawi is. Okay. Let's go back to our Sefer here. Okay. Again, like everything in the Ramchal, it requires thought. There's nothing. It's not lo b'shamayim. It can be understood. It's not Kabbalistic work here, but we're not used to thinking this way. So you have to think about what he's saying and say, hey, that's how really I do perceive. I do perceive at different levels of perception, and I make different levels of concept, my levels of concepts. It's very interesting in language. We say, does that make sense, or is that reasonable? Did you ever hear those phrases? Does that make sense, or is it reasonable? You know what I'm saying? But sense means, does it make sense? It's muchash, you see? You're saying, is it muchash? Is it physical? Does it come?
How would you distinct? You're saying, again, when you say it makes sense, that would be?
That'd be a muchash. What does the word muchash mean? Sensory perception. That's how the Ramchal defines it. That means, is that how the reality works? Is that how you sense reality? But it's not to be rejected, but it's a low level of concept. The other thing is it reasonable. I mean, what is reason? So there already we're getting to higher levels of conception. Okay, so that's what he's talking about in this place. Let's go a little further and get the total picture. Okay, so he says like this. He said, the meduma hu ashenenu musag menachushim klal. It's a musag, has nothing to do with it does not come from the chushim at all. Like I said to you, animal. Okay, you don't see an animal. You see a lion, a bear, and a tiger. Lo levado v'lo b'chibor. It doesn't come from the concept of animal. Doesn't exist by itself and doesn't exist attached to anything in reality. Ela haseichel hu asher yadam elso. It's the seichel that creates it. V'yischalek hu l'shnayim harishan musag b'sheni badui. The first one is called a concept, and the second one is called a fantasy. Now let's see his explanation. He says like this: Mare, when we talked about color. Dahainu aloven b'shachos v'shagavanim, all the colors. Ein hachush roma salavadam. The sensory perception, we never see color by itself. It's always associated with some physical thing. But what happens is, so somehow the mind says, no, white is predicated to the object. You say, this object is white, as if white exists, and you paint the book cover white, or you paint the computer black. Okay, that's how the mind works. The mind takes color out of the object that it's found in, but the meduma, Eino Kain, the Izbar B'Simich Lefneinu, and it'll be explained in a second. What's the musak? Hu hadavar she'afal pi she'ein metziuso hoveh b'ma she'muchash. Says even though the reality isn't physical, like I said, there's no such thing as animal in a cage. Roi limsa lefi hadrega. However, it is proper to find it according to a higher level of concept, hadraga, a higher level of concept. The nimshach hamuchash acharav b'seder, and the physical world does follow it in a certain organized pattern. Okay, so you go from the cat, right, to cats, to felines, to ballet, let's say mammals, you see, and then we go up the scales from mammals, you know, to whatever, as we get higher and higher to, you know, creation, you know, completely, as he'll go up the steps himself, okay? So when I get to mammals and I go back down the scale, eventually I go all the way down the scale, I get to my little lion or big one in the zoo, okay? But I went up the scale through higher levels of madama, of perception. And that's called madama. Okay? So he says like that. The madama is something that exists in its levels of conception. V'nimshach hamucha shachara b'seda. V'habadui, what's the badui? Hu asher enenu lo hove v'lo roi v'lo hamuchash nimshach harav b'seda. It's something that does not exist, and it shouldn't exist, and the senses don't follow it in order. Now, we're going to have to discuss that, but let's just read a little more of the parish, okay? I know we're taking a little more time, but I'd like to finish this paragraph. It's very conceptual. Okay, parisho. Hamusaku shemima anu roim b'chush anachnu danim al metzius she'ein anu roim. A musak is something that from the things that we see in reality, we conclude that there's a reality that we don't see. Let me just say that again. Hamusak hu shemema she'anu roim b'chush anachnu danim al metzius she'ein anu roim. It's something that we see in reality, the cats, the dogs, and from that we say that there's a category called animal. Derech mashal. Anu roim sheyesh b'nei adam v'hem chaim. We see that there's human beings and they're alive. Behemoths, v'gam hem chaim. Oh, we say, you know something? Look at that. There's these domesticated animals. They're also alive. Ophos, v'gam hem kach. We say, birds also have this quality of life. Nemar. So what do? Sheyesh min echad shel bria ben habrios hanikra min balei chaim. So the mind now creates a concept called balei chaim that includes these three categories. The ein hamin hazeh dava mamash. There's no such thing as an animal. I told you in the zoo there are cats and dogs and lions and bears, but animal doesn't exist. Zulas elu hapratim shel zicharnu. The only thing that exists are these dogs and cats and bears. Ella, what happens? Hasechel medama keilu yesh dava echad klali shemeschalek lechalakim pratim. But the mind, the way it does it is builds higher level conceptions, categorical conceptions, and then it looks to the mind as if there's something called a balei chaim, a general category, and these things are details of that general conception. Lefi Shemisada hadrega hu zeh sheyeh haklal v'achar kach haprat. From the seder of the organization of the mind, after it did the building of this concept of Baal Chaim, organizes things in a sense. It sees things now as if there's a cloud called animal, and there's all these little pratim. Kamo ilan v'anafal. It sees things as if there's this tree, basic trunk, okay, called the Baal Chaim, and it breaks into these subcategories of subcategories and subcategories. V'nimsa shahamuchash nimshach b'hadrega acher hameduma. And we see there that the physical world is drawn by levels and levels after the conceptual world. We go from animal down to the various categories of birds and man, and then we go down to each different section. Ki'ilu haya hamaduma hu ika v'muchash hanafim mimenu. The mind flips it upside, and it's as if the category really exists, and all these things in reality are subdivisions of it. Ma she'ein kain habadui shuhu dimyun levad. The Badawi is a conception, a very high level of conception, which is totally imaginary. And there's nothing in the physical world that relates to that concept. Okay? So now, the question is, what is Badawi? You see? So in yeshiva we had a lot of discussion about, does it mean a fantasy or does it mean a higher level of concept? To say that means a fantasy like a unicorn, some people want to say. Okay, well, is that just making a mistake? So I don't understand why the Ramchal would talk about mistakes in thinking, even though the word Badawi means fantasy. So I think personally it means a high level concept, like for instance number. Okay, when I talk about 2 or 3 or 7 times 8, mathematics, for instance, mathematics 2 does not label the reality. Okay, like animal does. 2 is totally a Badawi, is a total concept that has no relationship to the reality. You may then put a label on things and say, I have 2 jars here, I have 2 bottles here. You may use it, but it does not have it's not a categorical derivation of reality like animal is. Animal, when I see reality, I look at that cat and I say, you know something, that is a feline of the cat family, of the, who knows what type of cat it is. Okay, so that's what I think a Badawi is. I think it's a high-level concept, okay, that doesn't exist in the Chush, like number, like, 10, 11, 12. I don't, when I talk about 10 times 5, I don't have to think about 10 apples. I mean, when a kid, in order to get him involved in higher levels of concepts, so we say here's 5 apples, and now if I have 5 groups of 5 apples, how many apples do I have? But at a higher level of conception, so the number 5 does not have to have any relationship to apples, pears, or cats, or anything. It really doesn't. So I think that's what a Badawi is. Okay? So that was a mouthful. We went over a little, but I think it was important to get this chapter. We spoke in this chapter about levels of perception, from the base level of labeling what we see physically in reality, like the lion, to the higher level, which is also a level of perception, by the way. To call something an elephant cannot call something a lion. He may be afraid of something, but he doesn't label it lion. We have the ability to conceive of things in language, so that's the first level of perception. That's why children, the first thing they do is label reality, and they start saying Abba, Ima. They label objects in reality. That's the base level of perception. As we develop, so we teach the kids color. Color is a higher level perception. A child has to be told, this is red. Really? I thought this was a bottle. No, now we're going to get a concept by separating out from that bottle something called color. And then we're going to get higher level concepts, okay? higher and higher level concepts called Meduma, and then there's certain ones that we're going to get that are going to be so high that they don't even have a direct relationship back into reality like number. So that was his discussion of perception and conception. Perception meaning muchash, what you perceive through your senses, and concepts are things which you build based on what you perceive, and then there's even higher level concepts called Rabbi. Okay, that's the first class in Sefer Gayom. Any questions? Did I lose everybody?
Still here.
Okay. I tried to make it as clear as possible. It's, again, I spent a lot of time, we spoke a lot about in yeshiva. This is not something that we're used to thinking about. But when you think about it, you'll see it's really not that strange. Just talking about, levels of perception. So that's the first thing.
But what basically you do is you mark parts of it that you want to exclude from a conversion.